We are alive and trying to reach you. Clairvoyant Leslie Flint, who could speak with the voices of the dead, talked about the otherworld. Despite a nightmarish childhood, I have lived a long life without becoming a victim of psychosis or obsession. I can call myself a happy person because I have a job that brings me pleasure. I am a medium with the gift of a direct voice. I transmit the messages of the departed not in my own voice, but in the voice of the spirit, which usually sounds a little higher and slightly to the side of my head. These are real voices. They can be recorded and listened to through a tape recorder. The famous medium of the last century, Leslie Flint, said about his gift. Leslie Flint has been demonstrating his incredible psychic abilities for almost half a century. All this time, the surrounding skeptics have been trying to expose him as a fraud. To do this, Flint was locked in isolated rooms, tied to furniture, and during sessions he filled his mouth with water. However, the observers never managed to catch Leslie Flint cheating. On the contrary, the research of physicist William Bennett confirmed that the voices that spoke through Flint's body to the audience did not belong to him. These voices told humanity about the existence of the souls of the dead on the other side. Leslie Flint was born in 1911 in London. His father went to the front when Leslie was 3 years old and did not return from the war. The mother of the future clairvoyant was more concerned with her romantic relationships than with raising her son. To keep little Leslie out of her way, she took him to the cinema in the evenings, where the boy watched movies late into the night until his mother remembered him. Soon, his mother went to live with one of her fans, and his grandmother took over the upbringing of Leslie. When Leslie was 8 years old, an unusual event occurred, which he later called the beginning of his journey. One day when he came home from school, he found his Aunt Nellie visiting. She came to tell me that her husband had died at the front in France. While the woman was talking, Leslie noticed the image of an infantryman next to her. This vision disappeared almost immediately after the aunt finished her story. Then she took out a photograph of her dead husband, and the boy recognized in the picture the same soldier he had seen next to Nellie. When Leslie told him about it, they didn't believe him. His aunt called him a liar, and his grandmother even slapped him. Another time, on his way home from school, Leslie heard an unfamiliar voice in the kitchen. When he got there, he saw a woman with a large mole on her chin. But as soon as he entered, the vision disappeared. The boy told his grandmother about it, describing the stranger in detail. As it turned out, he described a friend of his grandmother's who died a month ago. But even then, Leslie was again accused of lying and slapped again. These incidents taught him to keep silent about what he saw. When Leslie turned 13, he found out that the gardener of the local cemetery needed an assistant. So Leslie found a job, which forced him to drop out of school. One day I witnessed a conversation between two gardeners. Mr. Hops was trying to prove to Mr. Cart that there was no afterlife. Then I told him about my visions. Mr. Hops laughed at me and advised me not to tell anyone about it, so as not to fall into the hands of psychiatrists, recalled Leslie Flint. From that moment on, he began to look for an answer to the question posed in the dispute. Not knowing where to turn, Leslie began visiting local churches, but nowhere did he find a reasonable answer for himself. After months of searching, he found himself in a public session with the medium Annie Jones. The medium pointed to random people in the audience and said that their relatives wanted to give them a message. Leslie was looking around for Mrs. Jones' accomplices, but at that moment the medium pointed at him. She said that the spirit of a certain Lewis was with her, who wanted to thank the young man for cleaning his grave and laying flowers. I was surprised, wrote Leslie Flint in his book Voices in the Dark. The day before, I actually found the grave of my art teacher, Edwin Lewis, in the cemetery, who died almost 2 years ago. I always loved his lessons, and he praised my drawings. Mrs. Jones's words amazed me because no one could see me cleaning the grave and laying flowers on it. Addressing Leslie, Mrs. Jones added, "You will perform the same ministry as me, and you will become a very famous medium." And that's how it happened. Some souls turned to Leslie to provide important information for all of humanity. For example, during one of the public sessions, The spirit of the former Supreme Chancellor of Great Britain, Lord Birkenhead, who passed away in 1930, said, "A person's life cannot be arbitrarily taken away. Having moved to another world, such souls begin to rush, not wanting to perceive the new reality." Leslie Flint said, Birkenhead noted that such souls are filled with thoughts of retribution. That is why some of them linger on Earth, seeking to carry out their sinister plans through others. Saying goodbye to the medium, Birkenhead said, "There is no such thing as death. We are alive and trying to convey our message to you." The spirit of Archbishop Cosmo Lang of York, who passed away in 1945, through Leslie Flint, revealed the mystery of human origin and the reason why people do not see other realities. "I have met thousands of souls here, ruined by ignorance. No one told them that their existence does not end with death. Humanity has been avoiding the truth for a long time. People are blind and cannot rationally understand who they are, where they came from, and where they will go. Man is a spiritual being. He has his place both in your world and in ours. If they hadn't tried to conceal the truth about another life, the world would have changed for the better," Cosmo Lang said. He also warned Leslie against having too many shower sessions. According to Leslie Flint, earthbound spirits of a lower order can use mediums for their own purposes. If you take their words on faith, you can get into trouble, Archbishop Cosmo Lang warned. He advised Leslie to clear her mind before each such session. This conversation with Lang was recorded on tape and shown in 1960 at the London Conference on Mental Research. As long as you live on Earth, you are in the range of physical vibrations. That's why all the objects in your world seem real and solid to you. However, the chair you're sitting on is just a collection of atoms. Their vibrations are similar to yours, and that's why you feel them," explained Cosmo Lang's soul. When a person leaves his physical body, his essence remains in the body, which vibrates at higher frequencies. This other body has the same vibrations as the other world. Therefore, for the soul, it becomes as tangible and real as earthly life. Cosmo Lang argued that sometimes the subtle body can leave its shell during its earthly life. For example, when losing consciousness, in a state of hypnosis, or even intentionally after a series of special training sessions. It is known from Lang's reports that people who have experienced such an experience have talked about a cord connecting the physical body and the energy body. Psychiatrists call these miracles split personality syndrome, but I would advise them to step over their pride and read the Bible texts. They say, "Until the silver chain is broken, and the golden band is restored, and the pitcher at the spring is broken, and the wheel over the pool is broken, and the dust will return to its earth as it was, and the spirit will return to the God who gave it." Leslie Flint called the gift of a direct voice rare, but believed that in the future communication with the other world would be possible thanks to radio and television. When listening to the radio or watching TV tuned to a certain vibration, you can see and hear people who are far away from you at that moment. It seems to me that the hour is near when smart heads will be able to detect the vibration that will help establish a connection with the world of the departed. People will stop believing in death, and messages with departed souls will become as simple as talking on the phone, Flint believed. "Our existence does not end with our last breath," said renowned physician Silas Mitchell. What is the most terrifying thought for each of us? This is the thought of death. A person is horrified imagining the minute when he takes his last breath. And how do children who have lost their parents suffer? And how do parents who are left without children suffer? However, there is no need to be afraid and torment yourself beyond measure, because examples from my practice leave me no reason to believe that a person's existence ends with his last breath, Mitchell argued. Silas Mitchell was born in the USA in 1829. By the beginning of the 20th century, he was already a well-known and recognized physician. He headed the American Medical Association, earning this title due to his professionalism and competence. People trusted his stories. I turned around, but there was no one behind me, Mitchell recalled of that winter day when the patient appointment ended around 10 p.m. The doctor was extremely tired after leaving the office. He went to the kitchen to drink a glass of milk, then went to bed. However, soon I heard an insistent bell at the front door. Mitchell knew from experience that such a late-night call could only mean an emergency. He quickly got out of bed, hurriedly dressed, and went downstairs. When I opened the door, I saw a strange girl in front of me, recalled Silas Mitchell. Despite the cold outside, the guest was dressed in a green wool dress. Her head was covered with a gray shawl, and her feet were wearing worn shoes. Her appearance suggested that she was from a poor neighborhood located at the foot of a hill. Inviting his guest to enter the house and keep warm, Mitchell was refused. The girl reported that her mother urgently needed medical help. The doctor understood that he would not receive any payment for this night's appointment. At the dawn of his medical practice, he often helped those in need for free. But now, being a respected doctor, such cases have become rare. Nevertheless, Mitchell decided to help. Putting on his coat, he went with the girl to her mother. The road led them to a poor neighborhood. The girl entered one of the barracks and began to climb the dilapidated stairs, illuminated by the weak light of an oil lamp. We found ourselves in a room that smelled of poverty. It was cold and damp. There was a threadbare carpet on the floor, a sagging wardrobe in the corner, and a sick woman lying on the only bed against the wall, Mitchell described. The doctor examined the patient and determined that she had pneumonia. He did everything possible to alleviate her condition and promised to return the next day. Turning to ask the girl to light the stove, Mitchell did not see her behind his back. "Where is your daughter? Should I give her recommendations on how to take care of you?" he asked. "Doctor, my daughter passed away 2 months ago," the woman replied. The woman wondered how the doctor knew about her daughter. Mitchell asked if the girl had a green wool dress. The woman pointed to an old cabinet. Inside, the doctor found both a dress and a gray shawl, which the stranger was wearing at night. "I think there is no constant communication between the world we live in now and the one we move to after death. However, in rare cases, the inhabitants of our world can observe the inhabitants of another. This may be caused by a feeling of love or other reasons. In all cases, such messages are achieved with great difficulty," noted Silas Mitchell. Another time, he heard an unusual story from a patient. This man was forced to leave his homeland due to illness and moved to Switzerland for healing. However, even the mountain air did not help. "I was told that surgery is necessary. They put a mask on me before the operation. I felt my consciousness leaving me, and then everything went dark," the patient recalled. "I can't say how much time passed before I regained consciousness. It was so easy and good for me, like never before," the man recalled. Looking around, he saw Professor Reinhessen, who said to his colleagues, "Gentlemen, this is very bad. We need to take urgent measures." The man began to look around and noticed something strange. There was another man lying nearby, and there was something very unusual about him. The patient found the man's face vaguely familiar. Suddenly, an indescribable feeling of fear seized me, because that person was me. I wasn't ready for this. It was impossible to explain everything that was happening with my previous ideas, he said. Upset by what was happening, he no longer wanted to stay among strangers. His thoughts were with his parents, and he suddenly felt a strong desire to be at home. Quite unexpectedly, he found himself in his living room. He saw his mother sitting in an armchair, busily embroidering, and his father reading a newspaper under a lamp. It was already getting dark outside the window. At first, I couldn't figure out why the evening came so quickly. Because where I was before, the day was in full swing. I soon realized that it was because of the time difference between the two places, he recalled. The man tried to talk to his mother, but she didn't seem to notice him and continued to do her job. However, he wasn't going to give up. Exerting all his willpower to announce his presence, he suddenly saw her raise her head. He read the concern in her eyes. His mother started talking to his father about him, and at that moment he realized with horror how she would suffer if she found out everything. Then I thought about my brother, who served in the Navy and was supposed to be somewhere in the Caribbean at that moment. A moment later, my consciousness transported me there, the patient said. He saw his brother near the wheelhouse and focused all his thoughts on him. Suddenly, my brother held his hand in front of his face, as if something was bothering him, turned pale, and said, "It can't be." I guess it was just my imagination. The man felt lonely, and this feeling became more and more frightening. For the first time in his life, he turned to the Lord mentally, but received no response. He was gripped by the thought that he would remain in this state forever. Soon, his consciousness began to blur. He felt dizzy and opened his eyes. Professor Reinhessen stood in front of him. The man doubted the reality of what had happened, but admitted that this vision would forever remain in his memory. I attribute this case to the proof of the existence of some other world, and if this world exists, then we must free ourselves from the false fear of death, said Silas Mitchell. All these stories, vivid, unusual, and sometimes even frightening, have one thing in common. They shed light on the edge beyond which, as we used to think, everything ends. But perhaps, in fact, everything is just beginning there. People who have experienced clinical death, mediums through which souls speak, and scientists who reflect on the nature of consciousness, their testimonies agree on one thing: there is life after death. This is not just a consolation, but also a challenge to our perception of the world. If death is just a transition, then maybe we should look at life itself differently. How do we live? What kind of footprints do we leave? What kind of wisdom do we pass on to those who come after us? Realizing that our essence does not fade away with our last breath gives us not only hope, but also meaning. The meaning of loving, creating, learning, and leaving good in the world. There is life after death, and this is not the end of the path, but a new beginning, mysterious, unexplored, but full of light. Dear friends, thank you for watching my video to the end. If you liked it, please like it, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. It's very important. Thank you, and have a nice day.